Most agency owners believe that growth comes from one word, and that's the word yes. It's yes to a new project. It's yes to every client. It's yes to every new invoice or every new opportunity that walks through the door. And while for a while it actually feels like the right move, you're busy, the team is working, invoices are growing out, revenue's coming in. But at some point you look up and you realize that your agency is full and somehow it's just not profitable at all. And clients are becoming increasingly difficult. The margins are very thin. The team is stretched and you just don't know why. And the answer in my experience is almost always the same. You said yes to too many of the wrong things. So in this video, I'm going to show you why no can be one of the most profitable words in your agency and exactly how and when to use it. Let's talk about initially why people are saying yes to everything in the first place. Is that there's this fear dynamic when you're a business owner, especially at the early stages of business, is that saying no and not saying yes to something, it means a loss of revenue. And this is, even in a lot of instances at the first stages of business, is actually true. But you have this scarcity mindset. If nothing better comes along, what are you going to do? You also don't want to upset people. That saying no feels like you are actually becoming a disappointment to the person that's asking you for support. The no criteria that you're using is actually very opaque. You're not even necessarily even sure in some instances of exactly who you are or what you're good at and why you should be saying yes or no to different scenarios. And so you end up creating this negative kind of loop of dynamic. And a yes can actually feel very safe in the moment because you have the ability to bring on new revenue, right? But the reality is that the cost ends up showing up later in your actual P&L of how things have performed. So let's talk about what saying yes to everything can actually end up meaningfully costing you. The reality is that time for an agency is a finite resource, and that you are ultimately selling a unit of time to your clients. Whether that is how you're positioning the way that you sell, that is still what you were doing. And it ends up becoming a very difficult thing when you're selling the wrong unit of time in the wrong way. Team morale can become very difficult when you're working with difficult clients, that are draining the team that is doing the work, which then ends up making the clients that are the right clients having a demotivated, unhappy team actually performing that work. And so it ends up meaningfully decreasing the creative energy. So bad fit projects end up impacting great fit projects and actually end up producing very bad work. And so you end up creating for this opportunity cost, because the reality is that there, in every yes is a built-in no. There's only so many hours in a day. There's only so many things that you can focus on. There's only so many things and so many projects that your agency can bring in. And so it actually becomes a meaningful problem. And in the end, it actually ends up making it incredibly difficult. The longer that you go in this dynamic, it ends up creating a meaningful positioning problem where you don't even know what you are known for. You're not even sure what you're great at anymore. And so what should you be doing? What shouldn't you be doing? It ends up becoming this incredibly opaque thing in the first place for you. And the number of agencies that I've talked to, 15, 20 years in, of having no clue of what they're even good at anymore is very common. And so what I want you to be thinking about, and here's a shift that I want you to be taking, is that no is a filter. It is not you closing the door to anything. You're not actually shutting the door in someone's face. It actually means that you're keeping the door open really for the right situations and for the right opportunities. And you're not even doing it to that person entirely. So every no to the wrong client creates space for the right one, or every no to the wrong project creates space for the right one as well. And agencies with the best clients are the ones that are meaningfully selective in who and what projects they're ultimately taking on. And when you're more selective, it actually creates greater confidence because you're able to now understand where you are good, like where that line is for you, and actually makes your agency appear and actually be more premium. And so you're not actually just turning away business. You're actually protecting the business that you're wanting to build and protecting the focus that you're wanting to have. So when should you say no to a client? The scenarios where you have clients that have no idea what the end goal should look like, where they ultimately should be taking things, they end up pushing back on the price point meaningfully before the relationship even starts, that they're not actually okay with you reducing scope. They just want it done cheaper. That's the client that wants something good, great, fast, and cheap kind of idea, right? They want to own the creative. They actually want to micromanage you. They actually do not want to be collaborative. They don't recognize that they need you in this scenario. They don't respect the thing that you do. They come in with completely unrealistic timelines, which actually bluntly is a lot of clients, but they have no flexibility in understanding what that actually has as a give and take. And the reality is I want you to take this as the understanding that when you are talking to a prospective client for the first time, this is the best that they are going to be showing up because they're trying to give a good impression. And if you get any red flags and your gut is telling you no, your gut is probably right. Now, when should you say no to a project? The project falls outside of the expertise of what it is that you can do, something that you've done well, and you actually have a system or process around it. The margin doesn't justify what the actual project is, and you should have a minimum margin, a minimum amount of profit that you're able to do something. And I've spoken about this probably hundreds of times at this point, is that every single project that you bring into your agency should be profitable. There's no point in running a project or business that isn't profitable. The project may have resources that you just actually do not have internally, that you don't have access to, and that you actually can't build meaningfully fast enough while maintaining your reputation. It would pull your team away from higher value work that is actually necessary, and even specifically with very valuable clients that you need to make sure that you keep. And it's just not the work that you want to keep and have in your portfolio, that you don't have any meaningful way to actually have this turn into a case study, that it is just grunt work for the sake of grunt work. Now, let's talk about opportunity. And there's loads of different ways that opportunities can present itself, but I want you to think about it of this specific way. So how do you actually determine when you should say no to an opportunity? And that sometimes our projects and clients do, and just want to reference that, is you should have an understanding of where you want the agency to be. And so it may sound exciting, and largely there's loads of different exciting things that come across my desk every single day. Doesn't mean that I should be taking up the person on this opportunity. You need to know where are you wanting your agency to be, and does this actually move the needle for your agency forward in the time scale that you're looking for? And is it going to actually have you or someone else on your team become a bottleneck again because your focus is too far stretched? It distracts you from the core of what you are looking to be and what you're looking to actually create as sustainable, meaningful growth. And the short-term growth may not actually justify what the long-term cost is to the agency. And so thinking about it that way. And largely, I know that this is a running joke. It's a little bit of a cliche, but if it's not on your vision board of the direction that you want to go, you need to take stock of, does this actually move me forward? And is this going to be somewhere that I want to be? Do I want to actually shift how I'm looking at my agency moving forward, even if it pays incredibly well? Okay, so now we have an understanding of what we should be saying no to. But how do we do it in a way that is professional, that doesn't actually end up closing the door to the person in front of us? And so you actually do need to be warm about this, and it doesn't actually require a long explanation. Thank you so much for, inviting us to this opportunity. This is not the right fit for us right now. You can even give a slight more amount of reference to this of, hey, it's not a right fit for us because this is not something that we are great at, but this agency over here or this provider is wonderful at that thing. I'd love to make an introduction for you to allow for you to be able to move this project forward. So referring them to someone that is a better fit, it builds goodwill. I mean, the analogy that I like to use here, right, is like, let's say that my laptop broke and I had my car already at the shop and that mechanic was working on my car, and then I ended up taking my laptop to the mechanic. I'm like, hey, this happened to my laptop. Can you fix that? Are you going to be upset when they're like, actually, no, we don't work on computers, but my IT person is actually down the road. Here's their card. Why don't you give them a ring? You would feel appreciative that they put you towards the person that can actually solve your problem. But if they said yes to me, I would actually question whether I should trust me driving that car and that whether my brakes are actually going to work a month from now, because they're now fixing computers and vehicles and doing brakes too. Just doesn't make sense. So never say yes to something that you don't know that you can actually meaningfully deliver on the promise. A clean no now is always better than having to have loads of problems and a mess for you in the future. So I want you to think about, how do you actually have a built-in kind of no framework? Because let's face it, and every single one of us can have that shiny object oriented syndrome and being pulled in a direction because it seems cool. It is alluring. Maybe we feel a little bit more desperate today. We woke up on the wrong side of the bed or whatever. We feel a little bit more pessimistic about the future today. Is that you need to actually have some definitions around a couple things so that you actually have a yes-no framework. So what is the minimum viable kind of ideal client fitting for you? And you should have it written down, and not just in your head of like who that is. It's like, where is the minimum? What is the ideal? So like, where do you automatically say yes and say no? Same thing with projects, with scopes, with timelines, with budgets, with, your creative freedom, the collaboration oriented pieces. You need to define your non-negotiables and what it is that you're doing. And money is not the answer. And I know that I'm saying this from a point of privilege in the fact that money isn't a motivation in the same way that it used to be for me in business. The reality is that those types of things where you're chasing the financial reward in a lot of instances causes so much incredible pain. So understand where those lines are. Those non-negotiables should be there and very clear in black and white. And you want to actually go through every opportunity of what's going on before you actually say yes. And so one of those things that you could have as your non-negotiables is I don't take on any new opportunities within a 90-day time frame. Is that every beginning of every quarter is the only time that I consider any new opportunities. That's totally fine. But what exactly is your non-negotiable of how you go about it? And this framework needs to remove the emotionality from it, because we are incredibly emotional creatures, and emotional decisions in business are incredibly expensive. So what is it that actually changes meaningfully when you start saying no? The clients that you have around you are working more collaboratively with you. They appreciate you more. They tend to be more profitable. They're just better because they know exactly where you begin and end. Your team is more energized because they're doing work that they're proud of and things that they actually want to do and have fun doing and are having the outcome, the actual impact that they're wanting to have. Margins have improved because you're not just discounting things to win a bad fit client or bad fit work and not even knowing what the hours would look like to do this because you've never done it before. It sharpens your positioning because you know exactly where you do actually begin and end and what you can do incredibly well. And the agency becomes more valuable because it actually is a premium agency now, and it stands for something very specific and a specific outcome that you can actually plant a flag in. Saying no to the wrong clients protects your margins, but it only works if you have enough of the right clients coming in to replace them. And the most cost-effective way to fill your pipeline with warm, high-quality prospects is already sitting inside of your existing client relationships. So I want you to check out this next video on this simple growth strategy that grows your agency so fast that it can feel like cheating, and learn how to make sure that you always have the right clients knocking at your door.